Hi, so glad you're joining in the service of this tiny ladies' watch. A friend of mine received it as an heirloom when her grandmother sadly passed away last year, and she never got to wear it because it can't be wound, nor does it run. My friend would really love it for it to work, it being her grandmother's and all, so let's see what we can do. Our first task is taking the bracelet off by removing the push pins. As you might have imagined, this vintage watch works mechanically. There is no battery inside and it's not electrically powered. If lucky, this little thing only needs a service. That means taking it all apart, one tiny piece at a time, giving all those pieces a wash, and then putting it back together using the correct oils and grease to get everything running smoothly again. This watch works because of a mechanism called a movement, which contains a mainspring that drives gears at an exact rate to keep almost perfect time. It's a spectacular mechanism, definitely as the whole movement would fit inside a big grape. And here we have it, the movement. The beating heart of a mechanical watch is the balance, which I'm trying to get to run now. It is rocking back and forth a little bit, but not enough to get the gears to start moving. So let's take the movement out of the case. Wow, this watch is tiny. From the first screw I need my smallest screwdriver. The part which allows you to control the watch when everything is closed up is the crown connected to the movement by the winding stem. So we'll have to take that out first. There we go. From now on we'll put everything neatly under a dust cover. Dust is a watchmaker's natural enemy. Now we're able to take out the movement holder, which holds the movement firmly in place, and then we're able to take the movement out. Now we'll take off the hands and the dial. First, of course, the hands, since they're on top. We're going to do this logically. I'm putting a thin piece of paper on the dial as not to damage it, but this watch being so small, the hands are just too close to the dial. I just can't get the lifters under the hands. Let's try this with a thin piece of plastic. And they came off. Let's check. Yeah, there we go. Now we'll keep them safe from damage and loss. You don't want to lose a watch's hands. Without them, a watch is really just a wearable circle numbered 1 to 12 without any real function. Now we're going to remove the dial. There's some text on there. One line says 17 jewels and another Inca block. We'll get back to that later. The brand is Krista. I had never heard of it, and frankly I wasn't able to find any information on it. All throughout the 50s, 60s and 70s you had so many different brands using off-the-shelf movements. But what makes a watch like this special is the emotional connection one has to it. And that is why we put so much effort in getting these watches back to work. What can make you feel closer to a person than wearing their watch, remembering them each time you check the clock? And it's not a Swiss watch, but a German one. The movement was made by a company called PUW from the town of Pforzheim. The first thing to do is taking the balance out. This is such a sensitive part with a hairspring as thick as, you guess it, a hair. Just touching it might deform it, which would be detrimental to the functioning of this watch. So we'll be extra careful turning it over and then putting it away. We'll reinsert the crown to let the mainspring down in a controlled manner. A non-running tiny watch like this will have its bearings clogged up with dried up oil and dirt, and letting the mainspring run down its power all of a sudden through the gear train might snap the top part of an axle. Okay, so now it should be safe to continue. This movement, the PUW 73, was produced between 1957 and 1963, which makes it at least 60 years old. I'm sure in the past 60 years someone has serviced this watch, but they did a very fine job. I can't see any handling marks, scratches or dents, so we will aim to work at that same standard. Oof, I can't believe how tiny this watch is. I screwed my movement holder all the way down to its smallest size, and it's still not small enough to hold this caliber down firmly. So I'll take the crown back. First, drop the setting lever. First, let me take the crown, and then I'm going to take that away as well. With an old movement like this, you're really not able to buy replacement parts. What you have to do if something is broken or you lost a part is find a donor movement. And since my friend really wants to wear this watch, I'll be very careful not to lose anything. A watch like this will have two shaped springs, one to wind it and one to change the crown position. When removing them, I use a shaped pegwood to keep them from jumping away. Like a flea, a click spring can jump hundreds of times its length. Germany is not widely known as a watchmaking powerhouse, although they still have at least a dozen brands worth checking out. But most companies like the one that made this movement had all but disappeared by the end of the 80s because of the invention of quartz. Battery-powered watches use a tiny quartz crystal and an oscillator to achieve much higher accuracy than any mechanical watch can ever reach. And they are way cheaper, so the bulk of mechanical watch companies all went bankrupt. So we have removed the winding bridge, allowing us to remove the barrel. This tiny container holds the mainspring, which powers the entire watch. If a watch would be a kitchen, this would be the oven. Then we'll take off the pallet fork. This part connects the gear train with the balance, changing a rotating motion to a rocking one. Wow, okay, the pallet fork is completely stuck in its bridge. Everything is clogged up all right. Taking apart the bridge covering the gear train, under which we find 1, 2, 3, 4 gears. Going from the barrel to the balance, the gears decrease in size and increase in rotational speed. The center wheel rotates once an hour, 2 gears down in many watches. It's already once a minute. Get these out of the way carefully, making sure not to damage the pivots. Here we have the final one, the escape wheel. This one has different teeth because it doesn't interact with a pinion but with the pallet fork, jumping one tooth every time the balance moves left and right. Now the only thing to disassemble is the barrel. The lid comes off like this, but I won't take out the spring today because of some ethical restraints. And because I don't have the tool to put this tiny spring back in a correct way. Oh, we always have to be so careful not to lose anything. Before giving all parts a good wash, we'll clean the jewels with some pegwood. The holes are very small, so the tip of this pegwood has to be very sharp. The jewels are pieces of synthetic ruby, almost as hard as diamond, in which the gear axles rotate. A drop of oil is added to reduce friction, but over time that turns into dried up glue that needs some extra care. The 17 jewels we saw printed on the dial indicates the number of these rubies. 17 is actually the basic number for a quality caliber. Let's just get the balance back on the bottom plate so the very delicate pivots are safely tucked away in their jewels. Always checking if the balance can move freely as I screw it tight. Okay. All the parts get spread out over the washing baskets. This container is for movements as big as a blueberry. Grape-sized calibers go right next to it. So, right now everything is clean and shiny, so let's see if it was just dirt clogging up the movement or if something else is going on. Time to put everything back together using the correct oils and grease to lubricate the right places. We'll start putting some drops of grease inside the barrel and on the mainspring, which is always expanding and contracting, rubbing steel on steel in the meantime. This is the arbor which catches the mainspring on this tiny hook, allowing the mainspring to be wound. Wait, this is not very smart. I'm going to do it on the metal block so I don't make this pad into a trampoline. There we go, and then we'll just close the barrel. Like that. And then we're going to put a little bit of oil on the friction face of the arbor. and you see it running inside. That's exactly where it needs to be. Here goes the barrel, and we're going to cover it up with its bridge. Let's screw it. This one is a little too small. It's important to always use the correct screwdriver size, otherwise you'll damage the screw head or slip out and scratch some of the bridges. And we always try to leave the movement as unmarked as we can. These watches can run for sometimes decades before they need servicing. Of course, the oil is going to start clogging at some point, and for a small movement like this one, that is going to be detrimental. Here we have some more lubrication points. There we go, here and here. These wheels are part of the winding works used for winding the mainspring. The crown wheel is fastened by a left turning screw, so it looks like you're unscrewing while you're fastening it. It takes some caution because you could easily break it when you try to unscrew it in the wrong direction. And then we put some oil where the ratchet wheel will be sitting, and screwing that one down as well. Excessive oil and fingerprints are wiped off with this malleable paste called Rodico. It is used a lot in watchmaking for holding parts or getting parts out of the watch without scratching them, or for cleaning or hiding some diamonds in. These two parts are the sliding and winding pinion. The sliding pinion has a square opening through which the crown stem is put. The two pinions are pushed together by a spring, which allows you to wind the watch. If you turn the crown the other way, they have to slip past each other, so we're going to put some grease in between them. If you pull out the crown, the sliding pinion moves to interact with the keyless works, which lets you adjust the time when you turn the crown. Okay, some more grease on the crown stem, and then we can put the whole thing together. Okay, and then we use the pegwood again to push down on the spring while I use the tweezers to place it in the correct spot. Otherwise, they always end up flying off. There we go. This tiny wheel interacts with the sliding pinion to override the time. It actually has a top and a bottom side, so let's check which side has to be up. Okay. And look at that slide into position. Fantastic. And finally, we put the cover on the yoke spring. Until this plate is screwed down, there is always a risk that something goes flying. Even if you accidentally tug on the crown, parts can pop out under the pressure. With the keyless works tucked away safely, we'll turn our attention to the escape wheel jewels. This movement is actually of a higher grade than you'd at first think. The escape wheel pivots aren't just lodged in basic jewels, but have cap jewel, so we're oiling them from the inside. We'll first put a drop of oil on the bottom of the jewel, and now we have to push it through. We'll use this extremely thin, fragile oiler to get the oil where it has to sit. You just damaged this thing by looking at it. There's only a small number of times you can use it before you break it, so you have to be so meticulous about it. You could take the cap jewel off and then oil it from the top, but it'll make such a mess when you try to put it back. We'll do the bottom plate side as well. There we go. Okay, now just putting it back without damaging it. Okay, it'll live to serve another day. Now it's time to get the gear train in. Looks like I made a mistake earlier assembling the winding works. The center wheel actually had to be put in first, so I'll have to take these apart again. There's no one method of putting watches back together, but certain things just have to be done in the correct order. Okay, there we go. Putting in the other gears now. Great. Okay, time to place the bridge. This is quite a challenging one because we have got 4 gears underneath and they're on pretty high axles, which means they're rocking about a bit. You can't just push the bridge down because this will damage the pivots. It's difficult. I just can't seem to get it right. What is this? Wow, this one is really difficult. Okay, let me take out the gears again to check what's going on. What is this? The bridge is still not getting in place with only 1 gear underneath. That's impossible. Oh, now I get it. You do need a little bit of pressure. It is pressure fit somewhat, so this means that it becomes even more difficult because if you're going to push down when a pivot is not in the right place, you're just going to break it clean off. So I have to be so careful here to see that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, and then just put enough pressure to get it to sit right without damaging anything. There we go. Okay, I got it. That was a challenging one. So hopefully smooth sailing from here on out. Time to lubricate the gear pivots. The jewels are shaped having a small cup to hold just the tiniest drop of oil. The actual gear teeth don't take any oil because the gears are made of brass and the pinions of steel, which prevents friction and makes them self-lubricating. Depending on size and rotational speed, we use different kinds of oil, but these gears are so small, I'm using the same high viscosity 90-10 oil for all of them. Okay, let's do that on both sides. And then we put in the cannon pinion. The minute hand will be mounted on this pinion, turning once every hour. So let's push it into place. There we go. We're getting close to finishing up the assembly now. I'm so curious to see if this thing will run. I haven't found any damaged pivots or jewels. So let's get the pallet fork in place. Then we can wind up the watch completely. With the pallet fork assembled, the mainspring energy is blocked and can only be released when the balance is placed in the movement, so let's just do that. Wow, this balance hairspring is so stretched out. Okay, don't make it worse. A sudden tug can cause damage, which causes the watch to severely lose or gain time. It has to be in the correct position. Okay, that seems to be all right. Let's blow some air on it to get it to move before screwing it fast. Yes, it's moving. Fantastic. Just look at that
balance go. Here you see turning
Here is the escape wheel moving 1 step at a time, 5 times per second. The contact points between the escape wheel teeth and the pallet fork need lubrication. Because this watch is so tiny, I'm going to oil the gear teeth. Oh, I made a mess, so I'm going to remove that again. Okay, so now this watch is up and running. The only places left for me to oil are the balance pivots. So let's open the spring and get the 2 jewels out. The balance jewels are different from the other jewels because they are part of an anti-shock system protecting the extremely thin balance pivots. This is the Inca block system, which is printed on the dial. It's a 2-part jewel system supported by a spring, which allows the balance shaft to move a little without breaking. It is so important now to be super careful because you don't want to lose this jewel, which is pretty much the smallest... Oh no. Oh, what happened? Oh my god, it just disappeared. Okay, let's check the desk. Not here. Not here. Oh, I hope it's not on the floor. This watch will not function without this. Oh, wow, I found it. Look at that, it got stuck to my finger. Wow, okay, I guess I'm pretty lucky then. Okay, one more try. Clean it and then a tiny drop of high viscosity oil. And then the two jewels have to be put on top of each other without any kind of sliding. There we go. Otherwise you'll have to start all over again, cleaning it again, administering the oil again until you get it right. Perfect, okay, let's close the shock system up again. On most of these old watches you'll find the Inca block name on the dial. That was the requirement for using this system in your watch. Of course, not all brands were fond of this. Rolex, for example, said no way we're putting another company name on our dials, so they developed their own anti-shock system. This means this watch is all set and ready to be adjusted. First we'll demagnetize, then on the time grapher we can see how it's running. Wow, plus 29 is actually a pretty good start. Let's see how close we can get it to zero. It's better to keep it running a bit fast to compensate for any kinds of bumps or shocks which may delay the watch during the day. So I'm going to settle for this plus 7. Let's see what we get with the dial side up. Plus 2, I'm very happy with this. And then just checking the crown down position, which is how the watch ends up when you're walking. Minus 6. Okay, very good. This will even out very, very nicely wearing the watch. Okay, time to hide the movement. We'll put the hour wheel in place. The hour hand gets put onto this wheel, turning once every 12 hours. I'm unscrewing the dial feet screws. I had them screwed down during the service so I wouldn't lose them, but of course now they have to make way for the dial. Here we go, giving it back that typical watch appearance. Screwing down the dial feet kind but firmly. And then we're going to put the hands back on. They have to be placed exactly on top of each other at 12 o'clock. Leaving just the tiniest gap above the dial, remember? Before we case up the dial in movement, we'll take a look at the glass. It has some minor scratches. The original owner of the watch looked after it nicely, but definitely wore it. So we're going to rub the scratches out with some microfiber cloth and some polishing paste. I'm always amazed by the result. Just look at that, brand new. Time to case the movement back up. Get it in good and tight and insert the winding stem. The screw holding the winding stem is so unbelievably small, definitely keeping in mind it has to be screwed down so incredibly tight, because every time you're changing the time, you're tugging on the crown. Okay, the hands seem to be turning good. They're only apart by fractions. We're going to close this watch up again, screwing the back on good and tight. And then the last thing to do is reattach the bracelet. There we go. This watch is ready to be worn again, running excellently. I'm so happy to give this one a new life. Thank you so much for joining me on this service. It was great to have you along. See you on the next one.